Okay, I said before that what we want to do is quickly and simply map out the main activities in the task. It's good because it gets people thinking systematically, and it helps everyone understand what we're trying to achieve with the analysis. But having done that, okay, we've ended up with 3 subtasks. They're all described in single words. It's important that we go back and say, have we got this right? So we'll go back and say, well, we know what the title is. We're going to transfer fuel from road tanker to storage. We know the starting point, that it's been ordered from an approved supplier, and the tanker is located where it needs to be to carry out the unload. And we'll say, well then, if that's the situation, is connect the first activity that we perform. And it's probably around now that people are starting to say, well actually no, we'd probably do some form of check before we connect up. We wouldn't just assume everything was okay for this sort of task. So we might add a subtask, confirm tanker is okay to offload. And we'll say, well, that goes before the connection. Okay, we confirm, we connect, we offload, we disconnect. Yes, that does seem, based on our current knowledge, that seems to be all the subtasks that we need to perform. We can connect them up, make it into a pretty tree like that. And then if we look at that subtask we've just added, it is important, and in some cases we may well want to look at that in some more detail. For the purposes of this analysis though, we'll make that decision, no, we're not going to. It's an important subtask, but we're not going to go to any more detail, and we can indicate that by drawing a line underneath. Now at this stage we're leaving the other 3 without a line, meaning we may well be adding some detail to how each of those is performed. So the next thing is we can move on to the connect subtask. We know what that means, but have we described it properly? Well, in reality, it's probably not as much information as maybe we should put there. And we can remedy that right at this stage by adding a bit more information. Maybe either adding it to the post-it note or throwing that one away and writing a new one. Okay, so we'll do the same for the other subtask now. So instead of saying just offload, we'll change that or clarify it to say, well, we're going to transfer fuel, and we can put there how we're going to do it, in this case using the tanker's pump. And instead of just writing disconnect, we'll just put a bit more information there about what that really means. So we've embellished it a little bit. Now that doesn't mean that what we did originally, just putting down those single words on each of the post-it notes, that wasn't wasted effort. Because that's a really useful step in quickly getting people to understand what we're talking about, what we're trying to do with the analysis. But to actually complete this analysis properly, it does help to have that more extra information. We're now going to look at those subtasks. As we said, confirming the tanker is okay to offload, we're not going to look at that in any more detail. The second one, connect the tanker, we are. And what we do is we say, well, what does that involve? What steps will we go through to connect the tanker to the delivery point? And again, we'll use our post-it notes. The first one, connecting the earth to tanker. If you're not familiar with it, before you unload a tanker, you would typically, especially in a hazardous environment, you'll connect an earth point so that static electricity can't build up, which can act as ignition source. Connect an earth, take another post-it note, connect the delivery hose. So that's the main hose that's going to transfer the fuel. And we may have a vapour recovery. So the vapour that's displaced from the storage tank, that's going to be returned either to the tanker or taken off to another location. So there's 3 elements identified to connecting up the tanker. Okay, so we can move those post-it notes, gives ourselves a bit more room, and we're going to do the same thing for the next subtask. So to transfer fuel using the tanker's pump, we've identified 5 steps there: opening valves, starting the pump, checking for leaks, standing by and monitoring throughout, and when it's all complete, we're going to stop the pump and close the valves. That's that subtask. We'll look at the last one. Now, in some cases, you may conclude that that does need further analysis. In this case, we've said, well, that's pretty well exactly the opposite of connecting up, and so for the purposes of this analysis, we're not going to describe that in any more detail. That's a decision you'll make as you go along. Equally, you'll now look at each of the steps. So look at the 3 steps involved in connecting up the tanker to the delivery point. do you need to describe those in any more detail? And the same with the 5 steps for the transfer. And you may say that, for example, starting the tanker's pump, if there's 2 or 3 steps involved in doing that, you can break that down into more detail. Again, that's a decision you'll make doing your analysis. In this case, we haven't done. That's where we're going to finish our analysis. That's the level of detail. So that's it. What we can start to do now, we can number each of our subtasks in that case, 1, 2, 3. We can number the steps using a hierarchical approach like I'm showing there. It is tempting sometimes to put the numbers in earlier on, but as we've seen, we've moved things around and we've introduced new subtasks as we went along. It's usually better to wait until this sort of stage before you number them, but that's a useful thing to do. Now the last thing we're really going to think about, I mentioned it right at the start, was plans, is to look at, actually when are the various stages of a task carried out. So if we look at the subtasks 1 through to 4 there, and we just put an extra box here, we might say we'll do 1 then 2. That's getting us ready. Number 3, do 3 is the actual transfer. That will carry on for some time, and there's something to wait for. When the transfer is complete, we're going to do 4. To be honest, in this example, that plan is probably not telling us that much, but as an example of what you can do, that's how we use the plan. And we'll do exactly the same for subtask 2, the 3 steps there. Interestingly here, doesn't really matter which order we do those steps in, and we can write that. And that's a useful thing about the plan. Looking at that individually is to say, well, if the order doesn't matter, well, let's say that. And then we do the same for the steps for subtask 4. And we do 3.1, 3.2, 3.3. We'll do in order. 3.4 is something that's going to go on for some time. That's going to be throughout the transfer. And 3.5, just to reiterate, that's something we'll do right at the end. So the plan is not always that enlightening, but sometimes it is. So it's always worth thinking about what order the subtask, what order the steps are performed in, what sort of contingencies and circumstances may have to be dealt with. Because you might find actually that's the most important part of the subtask. And that's it. That's our hierarchical task analysis complete. Just remember the main stages: identify the task title, come up with your assumptions with the preconditions for the starting point, identify the main activities in the task, we call those the subtasks. Think about which ones of those really need to be broken down into more detail. The ones that don't, draw a line underneath it. We don't want to put detail there that's not necessary. Where we haven't drawn the line, we're going to put some more detail, build the tree, and then we can think, well, do any of those steps, if they need to be broken down further, we can do that. We can number our steps using a hierarchical approach. Obviously, if, for example, we've broken step 3.2 down into further stages, it will become 3.2.1, 3.2.2, 3.2.3, etc. And then think about what order subtasks and steps are performed in. And we call them the plan. We'll add that as a separate piece of information. And that's it. That's hierarchical task analysis complete. I hope you found this useful. If you would like any more information, do contact me. You can email me, andy@abrisk.co.uk, phone me, landline 01492 879 813, or my mobile 07984 284 642. I'd be very happy to help.